Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a truly wild story. It's got everything: a presidential demand, a giant island, and a financial roller coaster that seriously put the world on edge. This is a story about high-stakes geopolitics, yeah, but it's also about some pretty crazy market psychology.
Okay, let's jump right into the chaos. So back in January of 2026, the S&P 500 went on this insane 48-hour ride. First, it just cratered, dropped over 2%. That was its worst single day in months. But then, almost just as fast, it snapped right back up. You can just imagine investors and analysts getting whiplash, just scratching their heads and asking, what on earth just happened?
So what was the trigger? I mean, this wasn't your usual suspect. It wasn't a tech bubble bursting or some banking crisis. Nope. The market totally panicked because of a sudden threat of massive supply chain disruptions and the near certainty of Europe hitting back with tariffs. But the cause? Well, it was something way more bizarre, something straight out of geopolitics. Let's start pulling on this thread and see where it takes us.
It all kicked off with a pretty audacious demand from President Trump. He essentially put a massive economic gun to the head of his closest allies. And the prize he was after? The biggest island in the world, Greenland.
The ultimatum he laid out was, well, it was brutally simple. It was a two-step plan. Step 1, a 10% tariff on all imports from key European allies, starting February 1st. And if they didn't play ball, Step 2 was a crushing 25% tariff by June. And the only way to make all this economic pain go away? Europe had to help broker the complete and total purchase of Greenland for the United States. No joke.
And just look at this target list. We're not talking about adversaries here. We are talking about the absolute bedrock of NATO, some of the world's biggest economies. This was a threat of a full-blown trade war against his own allies, all to force this completely unprecedented real estate deal.
Okay, so this seems completely illogical, right? You've got this massive trade war threat that sends markets crashing, and then, poof, almost instant relief. How does that make any sense? Well, the answer has a pretty interesting nickname.
The secret, it turns out, lies in this cynical, but, incredibly profitable market theory that has popped up on Wall Street. It's a whole strategy built around the president's negotiating style, and it's known as the Takeo theory.
So here's the core of it. Investors are literally betting that the president values a rising stock market more than anything else. The idea is he'll make these extreme kind of madman theory threats, but he will always back down the second the markets get shaky and threaten his political capital. It's basically a massive game of chicken between the White House and Wall Street. And right now, traders are betting big that the president will always be the one to swerve first.
Hey, don't think this is just some fringe idea on a message board. Listen to this quote from Dustin Thackeray, a head of portfolio management. He told the press, "It's the TACO trade. I don't think that slows down anytime soon." I mean, that tells you everything. Wall Street has turned this political pattern into a formal and very profitable investment strategy.
So the market bet on a bluff, and they won big. But that just leads to another question. What was the grand prize? What was so important that it made Trump risk a transatlantic trade war in the first place? Why Greenland, and why now?
The real prize behind all this geopolitical drama is a national security project of truly epic proportions. It's a multi-billion-dollar missile shield, and it's known as the Golden Dome. Honestly, that sounds less like a defense plan and more like something out of a summer blockbuster movie.
The Golden Dome is supposed to stop everything. We're talking Russian hypersonic missiles, Chinese ICBMs, the whole shebang. You can think of it like a fortress wall in the sky. And because of where it sits, right under the polar flight paths of those missiles, Greenland isn't just important, it's the absolute cornerstone of the whole thing. And that's not even mentioning its wealth of rare earth minerals or control over future Arctic shipping routes.
And the price tag? It is astronomical. Congress has already set aside $23 billion for this project. With that much cash already spent, you can start to see the immense pressure the White House was under to get the one piece of land that's essential for the entire plan. Which, by the way, is why lawmakers started asking, hey, why are we funding a project when we don't even own the real estate to build it on?
And here is where you see this huge disconnect right at the heart of the project. On one side, you have the White House pitching it as this impenetrable shield. But on the other, military and physics experts have pretty much dismissed it as a fantasy and a fool's errand. They argue that building a guaranteed shield against modern hypersonic missiles is, for now, technologically impossible.
So you've got an immovable object, which is European sovereignty,
and an unstoppable force, the White House's obsession. I mean, how do you resolve an impossible standoff like that? Well, the answer, bizarrely enough, came out of a meeting room at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
The so-called resolution that came out of Davos, well, it wasn't really a resolution at all. It was more like this fragile, super ambiguous diplomatic patch. It somehow managed to solve everything and nothing at the exact same time. It was a true masterclass in just kicking the can down the road.
This just illustrates the disconnect perfectly. After a meeting with NATO's Secretary General, Trump came out and declared total victory. He said, "We get everything we wanted." But NATO's version was, let's say, a little different. They called it a productive meeting, and then quietly pointed out that the actual topic of sovereignty never even came up.
But the most powerful and clearest response to all this came from Greenland itself. Aja Chemnitz-Larsen, a Greenlandic member of the Danish parliament, just cut through all the noise with one simple, powerful phrase: "Nothing about us without us." It was a stark reminder that two men in Davos have no right to negotiate the future of their home.
So, where does this all leave us? On the surface, it looks like the crisis is over. The tariff threat was withdrawn, and the markets had a nice little rally to celebrate. But that celebration is kind of papering over some really deep cracks. The immediate fire has been put out, yeah, but the fundamental conflict is definitely still smoldering.
This temporary fix leaves us on a very, very unstable bridge. The core issue over Greenland? Not solved. But maybe more dangerously, the taco theory has created what economists call moral hazard. Basically, by successfully calling the bluff this time, the market is now encouraged to ignore future threats, just assuming they're also empty. And that makes the whole global financial system more fragile, and it permanently damages trust between the US and its closest ally.
And that really leaves us with a final, kind of provocative thought. The market called the bluff, and this time it worked. But what happens the next time a threat like this is made, and one side decides not to back down? The taco trade is profitable until one day it isn't.